Rashida Tlaib, she gives this fiery speech and she says, you know, she supports Palestine and her grandmother is Palestinian. She has family in Palestine, and great speech, really good. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. It's very good. Thank God there's at least one person who says it. But then she goes and does this. Oh, Assad is a war criminal, huh? and she introduces a resolution with who? Oh, of course, it's Ilhan Omar, the other Arab African Muslim woman who, you know, you would hope out of the 400 people in Congress, maybe is a good person. No. Ilhan Omar gives money to Israel. She says the Armenian genocide didn't happen, or you know, votes not to recognize it because I don't know why. And then now they repeat the same crap that you would hear come out of George Bush's mouth, or Barack Obama's mouth, or Donald Trump's mouth, or Joe Biden, or Lindsey Graham, or Nikki Haley, or whoever you know, there's no difference. No difference whatsoever. So they call this Justice for Syrians resolution. Really? Justice for Syrians resolution. What does that even mean? Which Syrians? The ones supported by the CIA, or the ones supported by Turkey or Israel, or which ones? There are lots of Syrians today. Right? So here, she wants to direct the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations to use the vote and influence of the U.S. to establish an international justice mechanism to finally hold, here we go again, everybody together, Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. One more time, Syrian dictator accountable for war crimes and crimes against humanity. I mean, it's called the ICC. It already exists. Why don't you just sign it and join? Because, like I said, Lindsey Graham says, oh, we're going to hold y'all accountable, y'all Russian pilots. Really? You are? Bring everybody with you, please. We can have a delegation, right? You know, you can bring Bush and Colin Powell, maybe, although he's not with us. But wow. Justice for Syrians. Sounds pretty good. You know, what else is in there? So she says, in recent months, regional powers and dictators have sought to sweep Assad's heinous crimes under the rug and welcome him back into the international arena. Oh, now they're dictators. I thought they're your allies. No? I mean, I don't know who she's talking about, because a lot of countries and the Arab League, you know, they're cool with Assad now, at least ostensibly. Okay, so Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, Egypt, Jordan, and I know Assad was with Iraq, with the Iraqi prime minister recently, but Iraq is, you know, never took a position like the others. Come on. This you can do better than this. This is her official website. This is not like some I mean, it is a press release, but it's not somebody else mincing words. No, these are her words, Rashida Tlaib. So this is the woman I just showed you a few moments ago who's giving a fiery speech and telling Congress how bad Israel is and what they're doing to her grandmother and to her family. And then she turns around and says Assad is a dictator. What do you mean? The whole reason they tried to get rid of the government in Damascus is because it supports Palestine. I know, you know, not everybody wants to admit that, and not everybody appreciates that. Most people do. If we look at Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, which is one of Israel's fiercest opponents right now, one of the only people on the face of this planet, one of the only groups or entities on this planet that actually, you know, stands up to Israel, that actually does that. Where is its headquarters? It's in Damascus. It's based in Damascus. Its leader is in Damascus. The whole reason, as I said, Israel hates Syria is because Syria has always stood with the Palestinians. Obviously, I'm talking since 1945. It's been up and down. Syria wasn't always, you know, 100% with the Palestinians. But now, this never changed, right? Same today as it was 10 years ago, as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Nothing changed. Look at other Arab countries. Look at Egypt. Egypt went and made a peace deal with Israel. Egypt besieged Gaza. Jordan made a peace deal with Israel. Now, they were forced. You know, most people in Jordan, Egypt don't want any of this at all. But, you know, Washington has their governments by the balls. And now Morocco, you know, Morocco is normalizing with Israel. Disgusting. disgusting, you know? So how can you, as a Palestinian, an Arab woman, not understand what Syria is doing for the Palestinian cause and the Arab cause? This is nonsense. No one is telling you to like the government, but you are like trying to hurt the government here. And what I don't understand even more is a few days before this, dude, she votes to lift sanctions. Are you all over the place? Because she is, right? So again, let me recap. Rashida Tlaib defending Palestine, calling out Israel in Congress, and then she votes to lift sanctions on Syria, and then she wants to set up or direct the U.S. ambassador to the UN to get Bashar al-Assad, the war criminal. What? Make up your mind, woman. What are you doing? Come on. She and Ilhan Omar, especially, they're the only ones in Congress who are part American and part Arab, and who are also Muslim, and understand what's going on in the region, who should understand more than anybody else. Why are they doing this? I don't understand this. This is insane. I want to show you something else. This vote to lift sanctions on Syria. It's a bill from, it's something that was signed by George Bush in 2004. It's an emergency regulation, which is how everything is done in Washington. Oh my God, this is an emergency. We have to sanction this country, sign it, and then it stays there for four decades. So, listen to this. The one who introduced it is Matt Gaetz, who is also someone who's all over the place. He says good things about Syria, and then anyway. He's good. What he says here is good. Listen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I brought a war powers resolution to the floor of this Congress to get U.S. troops out of Syria, arguing that the United States, being excessively entangled in great power competition in Syria, wasn't making life better for Syrians. It wasn't playing out to our benefit in the sphere of great power competition, and that it left U.S. service members and contractors.
It's not a great power competition. You tried to coup the government and you failed. That what happened. You know what happened. It's not a great power competition. You lost. And you tried to do a coup and you lost.
Contractors as sitting ducks. And following that vote, which I lost overwhelmingly on a bipartisan fashion, sadly, there were casualties. There was the death of an American, because we have now become the neighborhood crime watch of certain areas in Syria where there are oil rigs. And that's what it's all about. So I now come to the floor with this resolution to repeal I
appreciate the fact that he is one of the only people in Congress who speaks, truthfully about Syria, but he doesn't really hit the nail on the head, because he's saying like, the United States is just, the world police or something. And yes, it certainly likes to portray itself as such and has done for a long time. But just say directly, it's stealing oil. It's stealing oil, and it's trying to, it's got 1/3 of Syria under its control. And the United States tried to coup the government. The United States supported groups like Al-Qaeda. The United States helped create ISIS. Well, it helped create Al-Qaeda in the first place in the 80s with the Mujahideen, and then helped create ISIS when it invaded Iraq and then tried to oust Assad. Say it like that. It's one sentence. It's not that difficult. He must know this. Come on. Anyway, I'll let the man finish. Go on.
2004 emergency vis-a-vis Syria. 2004. Now, it's supposed to be voted on by Congress every 6 months thereafter, but we have been derelict in our duty in doing so. And so I'm glad that today we're bringing forward a number of these emergency resolutions that have just been dormant slush funds, spending untold sums of money with no transparency as to how much is going into the Syrian emergency. But how about this rule for how about the House thinks about emergencies? Nothing's allowed to be an emergency for 20 years. Because if it were really an emergency, there probably would have been some cataclysmic event of biblical proportion before the 20 years. And if it's still an emergency 20 years later, it's a chronic condition, and the United States cannot be the world's policeman, and we cannot be the world's piggy bank. Now, if the principal argument against my resolution is that my resolution is soft on Assad, well, the logic that undergirds that is that somehow the 2004 resolution was this great anti-Assad tool that we must have, that we must maintain to beat Assad. Well, look around. Mr. Speaker, Assad's never been stronger. So if this 2004 resolution was Assad kryptonite, it's been the worst Assad kryptonite you could ever imagine. It's malfunctioned. So I think we ought to repeal this emergency. We have sought transparency to see how much money has been going pursuant to it. We don't know the answer to that question. And to the extent that there are sanctions that we still want to maintain, whether there are the other national emergencies that exist targeted at terrorism generally, at Russia, at Iran, the Magnitsky Act, there are all kinds of other authorities for the President, the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of the Department of Commerce, even the DOD weighs in, state, regarding sanctions regimes. So this is not a vote to lift sanctions and then just hope for the best with some pretty gnarly Syrians. In fact, it's us standing up to do our job, and that's what we should do in repealing this 2004 resolution.
Do you see what I'm saying? So he's not saying sanctions kill people. It's siege warfare, but in the 21st century form. Sanctions deprive people of bread, of fuel, of basic commodities, and it degrades and shreds their standard of living. It is siege warfare, and they don't even work. Show me one country where leaders were ousted by their own people through sanctions, which is sinister. It's like you're saying, I hope these sanctions make your life so horrible that you go and oust this guy and coup him for us. He doesn't even argue against it. He's just, he's like, like some bookworm, some nerd saying, well, according to my calculations, this doesn't fall under the regimen of the president, and we should authorize the sanctions pursuant to other. What, you want to do it by the book? Don't do it at all. It's wrong. Just because you think it should be done through other means. No, it shouldn't be done. You shouldn't be doing sanctions. That's the lesson. So in any case, this is what I was talking about with to lift sanctions, because these things sound ridiculous, and that's why they're difficult to understand. Because what does the United States have to do with declaring an emergency in Syria, and how does this relate to sanctions? This is how they do it, right? So here's the vote. You can see. So this was House Resolution 79, and so Matt Gaetz is the one who introduced it. 394 against, 24 in favor. And who voted in favor of lifting this 2004 sanctions against Syria? Rashida Tlaib. So on the one hand, on her website, she's saying Bashar al-Assad is a dictator and he's a war criminal. And then she votes to lift sanctions on Syria. Well, maybe she gets it. Maybe she knows sanctions hurt Syrians and they don't affect Assad. Okay. Maybe that's her logic, but she's still wrong. She's still wrong because she still sounds like Lindsey Graham. She still sounds like a neoconservative. This is very concerning. There's no recourse with these people, these so-called progressives. They don't offer any alternative. They sound like neoconservatives because they don't. I don't know if it's ignorance or it's on purpose, but who cares? If the end result is that you sound like Mr. George Bush to me, then I'm not really interested. And then here, guess who voted against lifting these sanctions, these 2004 sanctions? Please take a guess right now. I'm live, and if you're from the future and you're watching me on replay, guess. Take a guess right now. I want you to comment it because I'm not going to say anything for the next couple of seconds. I think you all know who's the usual suspect. Who's the number one suspect who comes to mind? I'll give you a hint. They're a Democrat. That was very hard to guess. It was AOC, the head of the fraud squad. So here I'm sorting these votes by no, or by nays rather. No. So Ocasio-Cortez, she voted against lifting sanctions against Syria. So do you see that these people have no real politics? They're all over the place. You cannot say you support Palestine and then one of the only countries that is backing Palestine politically and militarily, you try to attack. It doesn't work. You don't. Syria and Iran have suffered greatly for their support towards Palestine. that doesn't mean that like, oh, you should be grateful because of this. No, it's one, the way I view this, like Syria, Palestine is one country, right? And it used to be that way before the French and the British carved it up. These countries have politically and economically been targeted by Israel and the United States precisely because they support Palestine. So it's really, it just doesn't make sense to then start attacking them and repeat and not only attacking them, but repeating the same attacks that you would hear from the same Democrats and the same Republicans who've been running Washington for 20 years. Then you are not very progressive. You're regressive. You're backwards, truly backwards, like in every sense of the term, because you are literally going in reverse. This same old spiel. Oh, Assad the dictator, Assad this. Jesus, do they not get bored? You sound like a broken record. I don't understand why it takes a Republican, which is unusual, right? Because Republican, I mean, this is the party of George Bush and Dick Cheney and Donald Trump. Donald Trump put the Caesar Act sanctions. George Bush invaded Iraq, right? It's the war on terror. So yeah, I do not understand how it's possible that a Republican understands and grasps what is happening in Syria more or less. Again, you saw my criticisms. I voiced them, but I also give credit where credit is due. How come he understands what's going on, that there's something shady here, that the U.S. is stealing oil, and yet someone like AOC doesn't get it? I do not accept this. There is no way in hell he gets it and she doesn't. No, I'm sorry. I think, like I said, this is a case of rotating villain. And these progressives, their foreign policies all over the place. There is no foreign policy. They didn't even have a foreign policy section on their website. And I can't believe this, because if you are running to become a United States senator, which is, like the center for the time being, that, Capitol Hill projects global power, and you want to be elected, to the US Senate, and you don't have a foreign policy section on your website. This is like, it's like applying to a record label without sending them music. That's exactly what it is. It would be better, and expected, not better, but expected. I would expect for someone running for Senate to not have a section on healthcare, because they're just going to go in there and do what Big Pharma wants. But foreign policy, at least say, hey, I'm going to be, I'm going to go vote for Israel and do everything they want, and, send more troops to invade the Middle East. At least write it. No, nothing. Screw you. How, it's not laziness. It's something else. I don't know, When it comes to Jamal Bowman, who I forgot to mention just a few moments ago, he also voted to say Israel is racist, right? He voted in favor of this resolution, or rather against it, right? Because the resolution asked or proclaimed that Israel is not a racist state. So if you voted against that, then you're saying, no, Israel is a racist state. So Jamal Bowman voted against that resolution and said, but that Israel is racist. But the problem is that when he was elected, and I pointed this out a million times to you, that he is extremely pro-Israel. Remember, he's from New York. So he justified his pro-Israel or pro-Zionist policies by saying that, he has a lot of Jewish constituents, which again, I don't understand why they think that, just being Jewish automatically makes you an Israeli. Well, what is this? No, it doesn't. And some of the most vocal anti-Zionists are literally Jewish. So why do you think that you have to be pro-Zionist because you have Jewish constituents? What does that even mean? But that's his justification. So yeah, he like I said, the games. These are the games they're playing, right? He'll say, here's the thing from Nikki Haley, right? Just we're taking names. Don't bother. Jamal Bowman is very pro-Israel. You don't have to write his name down. Don't worry. Ilhan Omar will give them military aid. Don't worry. No need.